Okay, welcome to this explainer where we are going to dive into a framework that fundamentally shifts how we view power, self worth, and what it really takes to become, well, psychologically impossible to dominate. We spend so much of our lives trying to accumulate things status, wealth, physical strength because we're kind of wired to think that these are the ultimate keys to personal power. But today, we're going to completely flip that script. We're looking at a totally different approach, one that borrows heavily from Eastern philosophies like Buddhism, Taoism, and the Bhagavad Gita, to show us that the real battle, it isn't out there in the world at all. The real battle is entirely internal. It is all about deciding what actually determines your worth. To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to picture a very specific scenario. Person A walks into a room, and this person is literally dripping in expensive clothes, they've got a flashy Rolex on their wrist, Ferrari keys in their hand, just undeniable millionaire status. Now, sitting quietly in that exact same room is person B, a monk. So here is the question. Can person A dominate person B? Now, don't answer right away. I want you to actually pause, take a second, and think about this scenario. Because how you answer this determines if you really grasp the core of this entire philosophy. Well, if you really sit with it, you'll realize the answer is a resounding absolute no. And here's exactly why. Domination is fundamentally psychological. It's not physical. So the absolute most crucial point here is that nobody can dominate you if they cannot get you to play their game. See, most of us walk around assuming that power automatically equals domination. But power only actually works if there's a shared agreement between people about what is valuable. If the monk simply doesn't care about the Rolex, the millionaire has absolutely zero leverage. The game is over before it even begins. Let's bring this into our own real, everyday lives for a second. If I pull up next to you at a red light in a brand new Lamborghini, why on earth would that make me dominant? Ask yourself to really notice your first gut emotional reaction to massive wealth, or maybe physical stature. Like when you see someone with 50 million Instagram followers or a guy who is 6'6" and incredibly muscular, why do we automatically feel this instant shift in the hierarchy? Think carefully about it. The car itself or that follower count glowing on a screen, they don't actually possess magical mind-controlling powers, even if the marketing agencies desperately want you to believe they do. And this dynamic perfectly illustrates the real magic trick at play. You basically have two things going on. First, you have the physical object itself, like the car. But then you have your brain's interpretation of that car. The car itself doesn't magically create the emotion of intimidation or awe inside you. Your interpretation does. The object only has power because people assign meaning to it, which proves that true freedom comes from changing your interpretation, not from just buying and owning more stuff. That initial intimidating reaction you feel, that is simply social conditioning doing its thing. Because the honest truth is we are all just playing different games out here. Some people are playing the I'm richer than you game. Others are deeply invested in I'm stronger, or I'm more attractive, more famous, or I'm smarter. The deepest, most mind-blowing insight here is that, much like a game of chess, you literally cannot be beaten if you refuse to sit down and play. Money, beauty, and popularity are games that only work on people who actually care about them. If you completely step off the board, the Grand Master of Chess has absolutely no power over you whatsoever. Okay, let's look at another really striking example. Imagine Elon Musk, literally one of the richest human beings on the planet, visits a remote monastery. Does his immense, mind-boggling wealth automatically make him the superior person in that specific room? Think about it. The monks aren't measuring human worth by bank accounts or stock options, so the wealth game simply isn't active in that space. All of that intense worldly power just evaporates into thin air the very moment the context changes to a place that values inner peace or enlightenment over financial accumulation. This brings us to a pretty stark realization. Power is always relative to the game being played. Trying to use wealth to impress a monk is literally like bringing Monopoly money to a soccer match and trying to bribe the referee. It's just the wrong game. This is exactly why the monk is completely unimpressed by the millionaire. And it's not because having money is inherently evil or bad, but because it is completely 100% irrelevant to the context of the monk's life. Part 1. The Prison of Identity. So let's move right into the heart of this philosophy, the incredibly subtle danger of confusing the game you play with who you actually are. This is where this whole concept moves from being just a cool thought experiment into something that actively, daily affects your mental health. Consider the slight difference between saying, I make money versus I am a successful businessman. They might sound pretty similar on the surface, but psychologically, they are worlds apart. And that second statement, failure now directly threatens your entire identity. Meaning, if you lose your money, you don't just have less money in the bank, you truly believe you are less. If your identity is, I am beautiful, then normal, natural aging becomes absolutely terrifying. If your identity is I am smart, making a simple everyday mistake becomes completely humiliating. And this creates a very predictable, very dangerous downward spiral. First, you establish that identity, which leads straight into attachment, which directly creates psychological vulnerability. Honestly, this is the exact formula that advertisers, influencers, and status symbols use to control people. They don't control you directly. Instead, they get you to tie your identity to external things, which creates attachment. And that attachment hands the outside world total, complete control over your inner peace. The very second you believe your worth is tied to your possessions or your social status, you can be entirely manipulated by the fear of losing them. So, the big question, how do we actually break out of this? Well, to escape this prison, we can look to Advaita Vedanta, which is an ancient Indian philosophy, and this profound concept called neti neti. It translates roughly to not this, not this. Now, the goal here isn't to just deny reality or pretend things don't exist. It's about stopping the massive confusion between what you have or do and what you fundamentally are. It teaches us a brilliant lesson. Play the game for sure, but do not become the game. Let's actually apply this to everyday life to see how it works. I have money shifts to I am not money. I have a body becomes I am not only my body. I am an engineer turns into, okay, that's a role I play, but it's not my entire identity. And if people admire you, you recognize that admiration is just an event happening outside of you, it's not your core essence. These examples beautifully show us how we can safely pursue wealth or fitness or a killer career simply by remembering that these are just projects we're working on. They are not the baseline for our self-worth. Which naturally leads us to a massive philosophical shift in how we ask questions about our own lives. Instead of constantly asking, how do I look to others, which, let's face it, is just the endless pursuit of status, we should really be asking, what gives my life meaning? See, status depends entirely on the fleeting, totally unpredictable opinions of other people. But meaning anchors you directly to your own values, your own actions, and your personal responsibilities. If your deep satisfaction comes from learning or creating or serving others, your emotional stability becomes completely bulletproof against outside opinions. Part 2. Ambition without attachment. Now, I know exactly what some of you might be thinking right now. Wait, does this mean I just give up? Do I drop my career, sell my stuff, and go live in a cave? No, absolutely not. We have to ground this abstract philosophy in reality because that pure traditional Buddhist approach of eliminating literally all attachment just isn't always practical for modern life. The real key here is separating your goals from your identity. Goals are incredibly useful. They give us direction, they challenge us, they keep us moving forward. Identity and attachment, however, are the toxic beliefs that achieving those goals is what makes you worthy of love or respect. A beautifully balanced, healthy mindset adapted for modern life basically says, I am super excited to pursue this goal. I'm going to work incredibly hard at it, but I absolutely will not let the final outcome define who I fundamentally am. And look, we also have to be honest about the world we actually live in. We can't slip into total denial and pretend that status never, ever matters. Social status, money, physical power, they do matter in reality when it comes to opportunities, access, and safety, for sure. But they only matter as instrumental tools, not as intrinsic measures of your value as a human being. Think about a hammer. A hammer has amazing instrumental value if you need to build a house, but owning a hammer doesn't define your worth as a person. Money and status are exactly the same thing. They are just tools in your belt. They are not your soul. So, this brings us to the ultimate synthesis of all these ideas we've covered today. True psychological freedom doesn't magically eliminate all external constraints or challenges from your life, but it completely removes the unnecessary suffering we put ourselves through. So I want to leave you with this ultimate challenge. As you step back out into your daily games, whether that's grinding in your career, navigating your social life, or working on your personal fitness, can you pursue your biggest, wildest ambitions without letting them become who you are? Think on that for a bit, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.